This is the end of George Russell. Kimi Antonelli has now opened a monumental 68-point chasm to his teammate. This is no longer a gap, this is a declaration. It is a mathematical, technical and strategic demand for an immediate change in team policy. This is the story of how the Monaco Grand Prix didn't just crown a new star, but shattered a team's internal balance. It's a deep dive into the data that proves why Mercedes must formally designate George Russell as a second driver. And it's an analysis of why Toto Wolff's desperate pursuit of Max Verstappen would be a catastrophic strategic error that threatens to plunge a dominant team into a self-inflicted civil war. Strap on your seatbelt for this one. Welcome to Front Lockout. Chapter 1. The 68-point chasm. To understand the new reality at Mercedes, you have to look at the cold, hard numbers. The 2026 Drivers' Championship standings after Monaco are not just a scorecard, they are a verdict. Kimi Antonelli sits at the top with a commanding 156 points. George Russell has fallen to third with just 88 points. That is a 68-point deficit. Is effectively a 3-retirement buffer. Antonelli could suffer a catastrophic failure in 3 consecutive races, scoring 0 points, and in most realistic scenarios, he would still be ahead of Russell in the standings. When a driver is statistically insulated against 3 straight weekends of total disaster relative to their teammate, internal parity is an illusion. The Constructors' Championship, which Mercedes leads, relies on maximising every single point. Allowing a driver who is 68 points adrift to race the championship leader as an equal introduces an unacceptable level of risk. The math is undeniable. A choice must be made. Chapter 2. The Technical and Psychological Fracture. This 68-point gap is not a product of bad luck. It is the result of a fundamental fracture, both technical and psychological, between the two sides of the Mercedes garage. The technical problem lies in the tyres. On low-energy circuits like Miami, Montreal and Monaco, the data is decisive. George Russell's famously butter-smooth driving style is actually working against him. He is failing to generate enough friction to get the sensitive Pirelli tyres into their optimal temperature window. Kimi Antonelli, by contrast, uses a much more aggressive, abrupt steering input. This youthful flamboyance naturally forces the tyres into the thermal window, allowing him to extract the maximum grip. This isn't a minor difference. In Miami, Russell was 0.4 of a second slower than his rookie teammate in qualifying. By Monaco, he was conceptually lost, admitting to the media, "I don't really know what's going on, to be honest." This technical deficit has created a psychological vulnerability. Russell entered the year as the overwhelming championship favourite. Instead, he has watched a 19-year-old steal all the thunder. This desperation to reassert his authority has led to aggressive, error-prone driving, most notably a too-close-for-comfort on-track skirmish with Antonelli in Canada that prompted a warning from team management. This is not a new pattern. Russell has a documented history of making critical, unforced errors under the immense pressure of a late-race victory battle. The 2023 Singapore Grand Prix, where he crashed out of a podium position on the final lap, is a prime example. By officially relieving him of the pressure of a title fight, Mercedes can eliminate this negative feedback loop of pressure and error and optimise his performance for the team's collective goal. Chapter 3. The Historical Imperative. Formula One history is a graveyard of teams that had the fastest car but failed to win the championship because they allowed their 2 drivers to destroy each other. In 1986, the Williams team had a car that was vastly superior to the rest of the field, but they refused to prioritise either Nigel Mansell or Nelson Piquet. The 2 drivers relentlessly battled each other, stealing points from one another, and allowed McLaren's Alain Prost, in a slower car, to snatch the championship at the final race. In 2007, the McLaren team imploded in a toxic civil war between the reigning champion, Fernando Alonso, and the sensational rookie, Lewis Hamilton. Their bitter rivalry, which included a deliberate act of sabotage in qualifying, allowed Ferrari's Kimi Raikkonen to overcome a massive points deficit and win the title by a single point. And Toto Wolff doesn't need to look at the history books. He lived through it himself. The escalating war between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg from 2014 to 2016 pushed his own team to the brink, culminating in a disastrous double DNF at the Spanish Grand Prix. The lesson is unequivocal. When one driver has a clear, commanding and mathematically secure advantage, a team must impose a hierarchy. To do otherwise is to invite chaos and risk a championship. Chapter 4. The Bottas Protocol and the Verstappen Delusion. The path forward for Mercedes is clear. George Russell must be repurposed into the strategic role formerly occupied by Valtteri Bottas. From 2017 to 2021, Bottas served as the perfect rear gunner for Lewis Hamilton, providing a buffer against rivals, creating strategic flexibility and ensuring a harmonious garage. Russell has the pace to be the strongest number 2 driver on the grid. With his own contract expiring at the end of the year, Toto Wolff has the ultimate leverage to enforce this Bottas protocol. But there is a looming spectre that threatens to derail this logical strategy: Toto Wolff's desperate pursuit of Max Verstappen. Despite having unearthed his own generational talent in Antonelli, Wolff reportedly harbours an uncontrollable desire to sign the 4-time world champion away from a struggling Red Bull, viewing a Verstappen-Antonelli lineup as a global dream. This pursuit, while tantalising on paper, would be a catastrophic strategic error. First, it would voluntarily recreate the toxic 2007 McLaren civil war. Pairing a seasoned, ultra-aggressive champion like Verstappen with a fearless, hyper-talented prodigy like Antonelli is a guaranteed recipe for absolute warfare. A team cannot function with 2 apex predators. Second, it is redundant. Mercedes already has its champion in Antonelli. He is already extracting the maximum from the car. Spending upwards of $200 million in buyouts and salary to acquire Verstappen is an exercise in management ego, not a strategic necessity. It is a solution to a problem that does not exist. Chapter 5. The Antonelli Doctrine. The data from the first part of the 2026 season provides an unambiguous roadmap for Mercedes. The 68-point chasm between Kimi Antonelli and George Russell is not a temporary gap. It is a definitive verdict that dictates the trajectory of the World Championship. Toto Wolff must now fully embrace the Antonelli doctrine. This means an immediate and formal implementation of a team hierarchy. George Russell must be explicitly tasked with the Bottas protocol, supporting the team's primary championship contender. And the pursuit of Max Verstappen must be unequivocally abandoned. It represents a disastrous allocation of capital and a guaranteed path to internal chaos. Mercedes has successfully navigated its post-Hamilton transition and unearthed its next franchise icon in Kimi Antonelli. The objective now is not to acquire more stars at an exorbitant cost, but to build an impenetrable, supportive and harmonious constellation around the one who is already illuminating the championship. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree that Russell should be relegated to support driver, or do you feel they should battle it out? Subscribe the channel.